Hi, I'm Dillon. I'm from the Zoning Revisions Committee. This is the last presentation, so bear with me. Anybody want to stretch? Wake up, move? Okay. I'm going to talk to you about some of the discussions we've been having in the Zoning Revisions Committee about the proposal from the Chamber and what we've heard from the Planning Department as well. So I'm going to tell you some of the things that there seems to be consensus on in the Zoning Revisions Committee, and also some of the things that we're having discussion about, and we need your input about all of these topics. So, emerging consensus. The ZRC does agree that there should be revised zoning on King Street. We think that the revised zoning should reduce the number of uses requiring special permits. Suzanne talked about that earlier. In other words, we want to make it more easy for a wider range of businesses to locate on King Street. We think there should be more detailed landscaping standards on King Street so that you get a greener street and also it's more pedestrian friendly potentially. And we agree that there should be multiple zoning districts on King Street. In our work looking at the zoning for the city as a whole, we've seen that the zoning doesn't necessarily reflect the existing conditions on the street very well. And that's true on King Street as well. Also, having multiple zoning districts on King Street allows for sort of a phase change on King Street, so that perhaps the lower sections of King Street might become more pedestrian friendly, and then it can work up. Looking just at the entranceway business zone that the Chamber proposed, we agree that should be established. It seems like a great idea. There's some question of where it should start. Should the boundary between central business and entranceway business be at Trumbull Street or at Finn or at North? Should there be design standards for this section of King Street? Do we want to have more control over what buildings look like? And also, is this kind of zone appropriate for Upper King, where there's also a pocket of dense residences in sort of the area between Barrett Street and Damon Road. And that area in particular may have a population that requires pedestrian services nearby. They're not close to downtown, and also there's low-income housing in that area. So looking now just at the highway business changes, and the rest of what I'm going to talk about tonight is highway business changes, because these are the most controversial and the most radical departure from what is currently on the books. So these two graphics are section graphics. They take a slice through the street and show you sort of the longitudinal section of the street. This here and this here is King Street itself. Those cars are on King Street. So you're looking down King Street. On the top, there's the existing zoning for large retail. On the left, you see the intent of the current zoning, which was to have two-story buildings right up to the sidewalk. That has not been built to date. On the right, you have the existing zoning as it has been built, which is with a 55-foot setback, a one-story building that often looks like it's 2 stories. It's taller, but it's not a functional second story. And that's been built at CVS and at Toyota. On the bottom is a section showing the Chamber's proposal with the wider sidewalk that could be a multi-use trail, a green buffer between the sidewalk and parking, and then parking and building is pretty difficult to predict because the proposal basically says that there should be maximum flexibility for developers. So there could be 1 row parking, 2 rows, 3, 4. We don't really know how much parking there's going to be. Looking at the economic impacts potential economic impacts of the proposed zoning, it's likely that there would be more development that may have tax implications. There's some considerations. Will the new development achieve a desirable mix of uses, or will the street continue to be dominated by retail? Is there concern in the community over national retail chain development? That's a concern. In some towns, it's been a concern in this one in the past, so we need to know whether that's still a concern and then figure out if there's anything we can do about it, which there actually may not be. So looking at now at the streetscape, the image on the bottom shows you an illustration of what the zoning might look like if buildings were redeveloped on King Street. The redevelopment is an important point. Zoning changes pretty much only apply when things get redeveloped, so it's not like the zoning is going to change and people are going to have to go out and tear down buildings and build new ones. It's only when they want to redevelop that the zoning comes into play. So this shows, again, the tree belt, the wider sidewalk, a buffer between the sidewalk and parking, and then buildings which are likely to be located further from the sidewalk and may shift their orientation to maximize the parking in front of the building. Did an analysis of King Street and the effects of these buffers on buildings, and basically because you take up more space with a buffer, the buildings are going to have to move back. So the buildings in pink show buildings on King that are likely to move back under this proposal. The green buffer in the path, there are a couple considerations. Will the buffer provide an adequate pedestrian and bike experience? Here's a multi-use trail in Amherst that might be similar to what could be built on King Street. How long would this take to get to be established? Because it's going to be built incrementally as properties are redeveloped. So how long will it take, and how long will it take until it achieves a sort of uniformity that creates a streetscape for King Street? And finally, what can we do to minimize the conflicts between pedestrians, bicyclists, and automobiles? Site layout is a big issue. Should the goal of framing the street with two-story buildings and small setbacks, which is the goal of current zoning, should that be abandoned? Does it matter if you're in your car or on the sidewalk, or if you just got off a bus, how far the buildings are from the street and whether they're oriented parallel to the street? So if you're in your car, if you're on that sidewalk, does it matter to you whether the building is 55 feet from the sidewalk, as it is at CVS, or 85 feet as it is at Honda, or 284 feet as it is at Stop and Shop? Likewise for parking, does it matter whether parking is between the sidewalk and the building, or to the side of the building, or behind the building? These are all things that zoning can control. Doesn't matter how much parking there is. So one row parking, 2 rows of parking, or many rows of parking. Second story. We've heard from the chamber that second stories are economically unfeasible on King Street. Are they desirable? Are they something that we want to make a stand for? Second stories have 2 benefits. One of them is that they frame the street. Multi-story buildings frame the street better. And the second is they provide additional space for residences and businesses in the town. So if one of the goals of the ZRC is to reduce sprawl, the way you do that is by concentrating development in areas that are already developed. So should this second story requirement be eliminated? I'm sorry, we'll take questions at the end. And finally, highway business changes, design standards. Should design standards be implemented in the highway business section of King Street? Currently they apply to large retail. Should they apply to other uses and other sizes of buildings? These paired images show you 2 Staples and 2 Monroe Muffler franchises. These communities have design standards. These have either no design standards or ones that aren't working particularly well. And finally, I just want to show you a couple images of the Hillandale Mall. This shows how the Hillandale Mall could be developed under different zoning proposals or different zoning schemes. So here it is as it is now. This is as it might be under the chamber proposal with a wider sidewalk and vegetated buffer. I will admit that I wasn't very creative with laying out those plants. Hopefully somebody else will be a little more creative. This is with the same buffer but a smaller setback and design standards on the building. The building's hiding there in the upper right, hard to see in this light. This is with a smaller buffer, again, design standards, and a smaller setback. This is basically, if you took the current zoning and you added landscaping standards and somebody actually built it with a 55-foot setback, it would look something like that. This is with a very small setback and a taller building. And finally, this is an illustration of a site plan that was just approved last week for Cole Morgan. Building, Hillandale, sorry, for Hillandale. So this is a site plan that was approved under the current zoning. And it has, a wider buffer, some trees, street, basically a pass-through for cars in front of this building, which is yet to be determined what it would be.